What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of Inspired By. My name's Will and I make an assortment of music under the moniker Hush Child. If you saw my video from last week or you've been on my Instagram, then you probably know I've had a great time geeking out with this. This is the Microcosm pedal from Hologram Electronics. And firstly, for all transparency, this is not a tutorial video because I realized that probably most of my audience, like myself just before this week, were only using a laptop, maybe a MIDI device. The reason that I wanted to show you this today is because I think it makes a great first pedal. It's my first pedal, and I think it's a great additive to your DAW. So I'm going to show you a couple of workflow methods that I use. I want to thank Hologram Electronics for sending this out to me. I guess that does make it a sponsored video, but they've by no means had any say in how I present this video today, and they're not seeing it before you guys. So in true Inspired By fashion, the reason I got so excited about this is because it really does make you think about your music creating in a different way. It takes you away from the stress of adding effects and a narrative to your music, and you leave it completely up to the tactile functions of literally feeling your way around what you think sounds good. And I've made some amazing textures, and for the Patreon crew, I'm actually giving you guys two things this week: a gatulator rack that I'll show you a little bit later on. I think it deserves a video of its own. And also, if you don't own one of these, then I'm going to give you a pack of sounds that I created with the Microcosm pedal as well. So like I said, this isn't a tutorial video on how to use the Microcosm. If you're here, there's definitely going to be loads of DAW based learning to take place this week. And then next week we'll be back onto our normal tutorial schedules. But to understand the Microcosm, I do of course have to give you a very quick overview of what it can do. So let me show you that now. So let me give you a real quick overview with some drums here. So this is actually off, despite us being able to cycle through our different settings. We can hear the dry signal and we can see the tempo information on the left here, but we actually turn the pedal on by hitting this bypass button here, and you can see that the lights come to life there. If we increase the mix, we'll slowly be able to hear these settings take effect. And you can hear some reverse notes there probably, and the reason for that is because I've hit this button here. Click it again, everything is going forward. I can increase the activity by increasing this activity pot here, and I use this in tandem with the repeats knob. So I think about these two knobs like randomness and the amount of repetition. On top of that, we also have a filter. And we also have our reverb here. If we're holding shift and we use this pot, we're able to cycle through different types of reverb. I like that second one. And still whilst holding shift, we can do the same with shape and repeats. And that will then adjust the modulation frequency and depth. I won't do it in this example because we're just using drums. So one of the reasons that I love this pedal so much is the way that you can use it and then edit it inside the DAW. Imagine you're a guitarist, you're playing, doing all this cool granular stuff, it's breaking up your strumming patterns and it's creating these pitches. But what I've seen from other videos online when people review the pedal is that the pitches make it very hard to understand, where you should play and maybe where these frequencies are bouncing to. But us as producers, we don't have that issue. We can essentially make a bunch of random textures that can pitch wherever the hell they like. But then when we have it back in the DAW, we can repitch it so it fits our body of work. Let me show you with this first example. So one of the reasons that I knew that this would be such a fantastic additive to the DAW was once you got it back in your software. Let me show you. I'm going to throw these back on. And you can see here that we've got the clip that I started with, which was just our kalimba. It's lovely, there's nothing wrong with it. But here's what I've done with the Microcosm. Once it was set to that mosaic setting, I've captured it, as you saw in the last clip, and then I've brought it back into the DAW. Originally, it was one huge long clip like this. And I just went through trying to figure out how I wanted to use it. And I heard this repeating pattern. And of course I've pitched it down 4 semitones as well. So that's a brilliant thing, is that when you're using something that has like grain delay on it and it's dispersing all of these frequencies, but it's also pitching them, you can become quite overwhelmed of like, how am I going to pitch those back and set them into my project? So this is just one example. I've thrown this repeating pattern into this track and it sounds like this. So I've done a few things there. One of the things was that I just wanted to set a warp marker so that it was a little bit more rhythmical. I can hear these 2 quick staccato lower notes. I wanted them to land just before and then on the bar line. The second bit is really obvious. I've obviously got this higher cut and paste pattern here. I've got some little reverse notes. And at the end here, I've just double clicked on this pattern and reversed the notes. So I hit this guy here and just reversed everything that you can see. And then in terms of processing, I've got the compressor linked to my basic drum beat above. This is nothing crazy. It's nothing that I would look to like release, but it's just an example as to why you could or should maybe add some hardware to your DAW setup. So that group is just being affected by the kick drum. We'll come back to the EQ. And then what I've done is I've added an auto pan to give it some movement, to take it away from the middle. I've just taken off some of the lows and added a little bit of OTT to just bring out some of those harsh transients. But the real brilliance is now when you add your onboard effects to something that is already an effects unit. So here I've got 2 sends. I've got the Valhalla reverb on send A, and I've just got some stereo delay on send B with the filter turned on. So I'm getting all of those nice higher frequencies. So it sounds like this. I'm just going to solo this instrument here. Completely dry. And then the delay. So I think that's really lovely, and you can automate that. So what I would have done in a sense of having the dry signal and now the wet signal is just match this. I'm going to put this down 4 semitones as well. I would keep this really low in the mix. With the EQ8 on the first dry signal, I'm just going to take this mid-band frequency, so it's more of like a dull thud. And I'm going to mix it with the group, which is now high-passed. And every now and then, we can just automate some of those sends in. I just think that's way more interesting than what we had at the start with just these 2 elements. So we've added a lot of character there, but we've taken out a lot of the legwork of adding maybe portal, some delays, some movement in there. Maybe we're adding filters, that kind of thing. We've used it all with one device. We've made it extremely tactile, and we've created so much interest and ear candy to our track as well. How nice is that? I just love the stereo width of everything. I love how it makes it a dry pattern, which by the way, Docado was already beautiful, but it makes it so much more interesting. I'm gonna give that loop away in the sound pack for the Patreon crew today as well, because I think you guys might do something with it. And if you make a full song, feel free to share it on our Discord. I'm genuinely just really excited to have this in the arsenal. And when I feel a little bit of beat block coming on, I can just turn to this, just get a little bit more tactile with the music and have some fun. Oh, before I forget, at the end of the week, I've got some new music coming out with my friend and collaborator, Adira. If you want to pre-save that, there's a link in the description below. And then if you're here after the event, you just want to check it out as well, you can use that link as well. That link was made, by the way, with DistroKid, who are today's sponsor. They make it super easy for you to have tools like this when you release your music to all the streaming platforms. It was essentially hyperfollow tool. I click that, copy and paste it to my Instagram bio, or in this case, the YouTube description, and then I'm good to go. So if you do want to start releasing your music with DistroKid, then just use the other link in the description below and you'll get 7% off your first year. Let's get back to some geeky stuff. The second way that I've been using this is with a rack I created for the Patreon crew as well. It's essentially like granular synthesis versus creating like loads of staccato gates. This is a great way to create some like rhythmical polyrhythms that are also tonal within your music as well. Check this out. So here's another example of a way that I would process the sounds after I've used it. I'm calling this rack the Gateulator, as you'll see why in a second. And I'm also giving it away this week for the Patreon crew as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this rack because I think it actually deserves a video of itself. So if you want to see that sooner than later, let me know in the comments below. Like I said, I'll cover it in future, but essentially what this is doing is randomizing the samples that I have above, which is this clip here, but allowing me to affect the rate, the gate, the pitch, and the width. I'm a poet. So originally I recorded like 4 or 5 minutes of me using like the beat repeats and some of the grain variations from the Microcosm. And then I chopped up all of the parts that I felt were really, really interesting, but I wouldn't know what to use. There's no context, I'm just hearing sounds. And I basically dropped them into my Gateulator, drew a really long legato note, and then we get this. So you can see the playhead is just skipping around there, and I can mess with that rate. So in a real world example, what I'd probably do is try to find a drum loop that would sit with this. We'll just find something at random. So we're going to loop that up a whole bunch. And then we're just going to kind of record in on a new audio track. I would resample what was going on here. So we're going to take the ins from track 2. We're just going to make sure that that works. So track 4 is taking everything from the Gateulator. I'm going to play this together and just try and find some kind of groove. I'm going to mess with the rate, gate, pitch, and width. Cool. So I think there's enough there. There's something there that we can use. I don't want to spend too much time. I want the computer to do the work for me. So there was something in here that I really like as percussion. I really like that. We're going to take just this section here. We're going to put that underneath. And then with this, rhythmically do something with that. So now we're just going to solo these two. I think the downside to this was the beat that we used. So let's use something a little bit more friendly. Cool, so that might be my starting point, my first part of the canvas where I'm just laying out ideas. But now I have an idea in my head and I would start creating maybe pads and chords and things underneath. And then I would layer all of my ideas on top of that. But it's really taken out a lot of the legwork. It's got me working quickly. It's got me working in a way that I wouldn't usually think about. Because if I wanted to get to this result, I would have to cognitively think. I would like a trance gate. I'd like to make the sounds really staccato, really wide. I want to have a beat repeat element in there. You see, I would have to keep compounding new effects on top of that. And I wouldn't necessarily follow that narrative. But with the Microcosm, it's created those effects for me. Then I've allowed the Gateulator to split up all of those effects, choose them at random, and all I did was move some sliders about. But the brilliant thing is it can't be replicated. I created those sounds, and even if you had the Microcosm and the Gateulator as well, you're going to end up with completely different results. And we both had a very similar tactile, hopefully fun experience. So there we have it, guys. I hope that's got you thinking about maybe music creation a little bit differently, whether it be the narrative of where you take your music inside the DAW, or if you're maybe thinking about purchasing the Microcosm as well. A lot of collaborators and friends that play guitar messaged me after I got the Microcosm and was like, did it come with a power supply? And I was like, yeah, obviously. But it turns out that most guitar pedals don't actually come with a power supply. So I really did luck out with this being the first pedal that I've ever got, and it also comes fully kitted out. I really think it's brilliant. So thank you once again, Hologram Electronics, for hooking me up with this. If you guys want to see more kind of hands-on tactile stuff, whether it be machine, pedals, or other things, do let me know. But as I said, it's just a one-off. I wanted to do something different, something creative for you guys. Next week, we're going to go back to our kind of artist tutorials in true inspired by fashion. But I do hope you enjoyed this video, guys. As always, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.